Hey, Tim.
Hey, Kevin. Good morning. I said good morning, Gil. Good morning.
Hi, Tim. There you go. That's better. I'm Kevin,
I'm Susie.
and
We're three of the pastors here.
there you go. And we thought it would be of value and hopefully to encourage you a little bit this morning that we'd like to talk a little bit about the future journey and where we've been over the last month or so. If you've been with us over the last month, December 15th, our lead pastor, Jamie George, resigned that day. So that was about 3 weeks ago. And we've been receiving a lot of questions. We understand. There's probably a lot of emotion for some of you in the room, and some of you didn't know Jamie, so there isn't. But we understand that there's a lot going on around this. But we've been getting questions, and we kind of want to fill you in. We do want to fill you in on where we're at and where we're going. And as we do that, we'd like to give you a quick peek, a little bit behind the curtain of what's been happening over the last several years, preparing us actually for this day. We do believe that what was happening, we have been being prepared for this. And so with that, here's a little bit more information. So as we look forward, let's just quickly look backward for just a second. I joined staff in 2016 on February 29th, leap year day. We get another one this year, by the way, another February 29th. And we were, isn't that weird? And we were meeting at Church of the City in the evening in a ginormous meeting room, very similar to this.
Except not.
Not really. Were any of you with us when we were in Church of the City?
Oh,
All
you
right,
all get your
all right.
own parking space.
Yes.
Now.
Is that what they get?
Yeah.
There's free soda and a drinking fountain too.
Yes.
Actually, if you want a mug, take a mug. We got mugs. We don't have soda and we have no parking spaces. So, with that being said, when I joined in 2016, church was in a precarious place. We were meeting in somebody else's building. We had just gotten kicked out of the factory. Or not kicked out.
Asked to leave.
Invited out. Clarify. Because kicked out seems so harsh.
It wasn't harsh at all.
No, not at all. And Jamie was in a bit of a precarious place himself. He was going through some difficult times. He was feeling the weight of all that, and also, anyway. So when I was hired, I was tasked with three things. The first thing was to find a place for us to be, a building. The second was to build the staff, and the third was to help Jamie find his lane in the ministry of the church. So it took about a year, but we found this place, which is still in process, but we're here. And we've got a place, and it's starting to take shape of being our own.
The blue tarp's still up, which
Yes,
is cool.
yes, the blue tarp.
Blue tarp is
We're
awesome.
the church of the blue tarp.
Somebody made a gingerbread house of our church
Shut up.
for our Christmas party. Yeah.
With a blue tarp
For
on
our
it.
staff Christmas party, Nathan Harbor made a gingerbread house with like the train in the back, the blue tarp, everything.
This,
Great. So good. We celebrate all of it.
so much for that accomplishment of finding a place to be. The second thing was to rebuild the staff, and that's been an ongoing process. People have been in and out, but over the last couple of years, we've really built a solid, good, loving staff that fits the culture of Journey, which has been really the trick of it. The hard part is to bring people into this culture and not have them want to change it. And our vision going forward is we want that to be a part of who we are. We want the culture to stay the same. We want to lead with love. We want to lead with grace. We want people to come in here and find this to be a place of healing. We want all those things to remain true. And so part of the trick is always to bring in somebody that when they join staff is they want to bring their personhood, and we want them to bring their personhood. The tricky part is can you adapt it to our culture?
And add to the culture.
And add to the culture. So And then the third thing was to help Jamie find his spot. And Jamie's passion was teaching. You all know that. And we're going to miss his teaching. And so we tried as best we could to put him in that slot of being the teacher, the main teacher, and that's what we did. And ultimately, that left a lot of the other stuff to me. And so with that comes behind the scenes, what was mostly transpiring is I led the staff and the things behind the scenes, and Jamie was the voice and the person that was the teacher of Journey. And so, and if you've been a part of us for a while, you've noticed that Jamie and I would do things together. We did the leadership things together. We taught together once in a while. I don't know if you call question and answer teaching or not, but we had a good time. And with that, though, we began to co-pastor primarily the church. And I think in many ways, Jamie was setting me and the staff up to be able to go forward without him. And I know that sounds sad in one breath, but also very empowering in another breath.
Well, it's actually really smart.
Yes, smart's a good word.
Yes. And we all like to do that. We would all like to do that. And even with the teams that we have currently in place, our goal as a leadership team of teams is to continue developing those teams beyond even the staff, but with all of us that call Journey home.
And with that, we've got several teams, and those teams have been in place for a period of time.
Yes.
And one of them is
Spiritual
yours.
Formation Team
Yes.
that I get to lead. And the Spiritual Formation Team includes the three of us, as well as Sam Barnhart, who's our shepherding and care pastor, and Brett Mabry, who's our artist pastor, and he oversees the Arts Collective. But our responsibility as a team is to kind of set the spiritual tone of the church and to create avenues for people to grow spiritually and develop spiritually here at Journey. So when I first started coming here 4 years ago, I would walk around and meet people around town, and they would ask me where I go to church, and I'd say Journey, and they would say, I love that church. I used to go there. And I'd be like, well, why don't you go there anymore if you love it so much? I mean, like, do we go to a weird church? Like, what's the deal? So what I noticed when we started coming was that it's a weird church. But Journey was a place where people would come often and heal, but then when it was time for them to grow, there wasn't like a lot of clarity on or pathways for that. And so they would leave and go grow and serve other places. So what we have endeavored to do is create opportunities for people to develop spiritually, to develop in their relationships with other people, because we believe that forms you spiritually, develop in their serving and using their gifts, because we believe that forms you spiritually. Am I missing anything? No, all the things.
That's the future. And in this type of thing happening, we are reminded that church is, again, not a person. It can't be, or a building, obviously. Or a blue tarp. It cannot be a blue tarp. That would be awesome. It's you, right? It's you. It's me. We are the church. And so with that, in the future, talking about spiritual formation, that's the invitation that we are all doing this with each other, not for each other, but with each other. That we're saying, okay, Jesus, where are you at work, and we want to join you. So that's what we get to offer. So
the Spiritual Formation Team also works in tandem with the Content Team, which is also the three of us. We go to a lot of meetings.
Yes.
And also that includes Kristen Fields, who's our Director of Communication. It includes Caitlin, who oversees our music worship teams, and Rob Gonzalez.
Call Robert.
and Shane Glover, who are our youth pastors. Occasionally Samantha Harbor comes because she runs the church and needs to know what's happening.
Sam likes to come.
Sam Barnhart. So what the content team does is really drives what happens here on Sunday morning. So that's the other thing that Jamie was really great at, empowering all of us to contribute to the vision and the creation of the messages that we're here every Sunday. So even though if we weren't teaching, we were still part of developing that content with him. And the goal was that we would develop a team of teachers anyway. So this year we were going to actually be spreading more of that around already, which we are now. But there was a team created Jamie, Tim, Kevin, and myself, that we were going to carry most of the teaching throughout the year.
Correct. Truism.
And it's fun.
It's fun. Yes, it's fun and fine and good. I'm going to now answer 3 questions. We're trying to project that, never mind. So I've been getting pretty consistently 3 questions, and so I'm going to try to answer them as transparently as I can, invite you into a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes. And the first is, how are the finances of the church? And that question usually boils down to, is it solvent? Or is everything okay? And the big answer to that question is yes. Actually, we are doing really well financially. The end of year giving was really good. We are currently sitting with a reserve fund of about $350,000. And we still have about $200,000 in our building fund. We've paid $1 million out of our giving towards the building already, and we just started to tap into our loan, our building loan. So that's where we are financially. We still have a ways to go, and we're starting down that process. The other thing I want to tell you is that when this...
Tell them the thing about the loan.
No, I'll tell them about the loan when I do the building.
Okay.
But thank
This
you.
is when it gets weird.
Yeah, just stay with us. Stay with us. This is, I actually have some of this written down, so I came prepared. Is that the other thing that we did, just so that, what was that?
I'm doing great.
You're doing it. Okay, so the other thing that we did was when we found out that Jamie was resigning, we froze our spending. Because we didn't know what the future would hold. And so we've carried over our 2019 budget into 2020. And so we've we've told the staff that no one's getting a raise, everybody's going to stay at what they were making last year. We're going to wait and evaluate the first quarter, see where we're at the end of March, and then if we need to make changes, we will. If not, we'll stay the course. But financially, God's provided through you. Thank you. Thank you for being faithful. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you. The building, that's the next question, has been, are we going to finish the building? Yes, we are. We're pressing forward with the building. I honestly feel this, the moment that this happened, I was a little frustrated with, we're right in the middle of this, right in the middle. And so there was a little bit of my emotion was attached to really. But I think this happened right in the middle because we have to finish it. We have to keep going forward. We can't just stop with a blue tarp on our building. And so part of the...
What if we just painted that section blue?
Well, yeah, right. Just
Keep going, Kevin. You still have to give a message.
let me tell you, I get a letter from Brentwood that was really long if that's all we did. But I do believe that God purposefully does things, and I don't think this was a surprise, and I think the timing of it was not accidental. We've also asked a couple of guys to help oversee it, to kind of take it off my place. A guy by the name of Ty Hasty and Grant Opperman are going to team up with Randy Hansen, and it sounds like they might even bring in a few more people to that, so that would be great.
There's an interesting thing that happened. When a leader leaves something, the bank is like, uh-oh, there's a key man clause here, and if that person leaves, they freeze things, right? And so we were a little nervous about that.
Yes.
And Kevin went in there and they said, no, you're the key man. Like, yes, he is. Yes. That's what we told you. We're just coming to tell you, remind you. So,
Yeah.
but here,
My name was actually written into a document as
Yeah.
the key man. Funny.
anywho, so I'm going to go here really quick and love me through this. But Kevin has really been running this community for a while. And Jamie is so wonderful and such a good friend, and we're good. And people keep saying, so what's happening with the staff? And I'm like, not much. we're going to keep going and actually do different things that we're actually really excited about. Kevin's been leading this. He built this whole staff, and every person on this amazing group of staff, by the way, would take like 20 bullets for this guy. And it's not, because of his looks. It's mostly...
Appreciate that.
It's the thumbprint that he's put on each of us. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that thumbprint, and I think that will just continue with this community because the depth of this man has really been so good for my soul and will continue to be good for our souls and for this community to actually join Jesus in more beautiful and powerful ways. So, for lack of anything else better to say, Kevin's kind of become the actual key man Claus in our spiritual community. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Just, you guys don't see behind the scenes, and especially these two are just like so beautiful and have handled this thing so beautifully, just so you know that you kind of hope that a church would actually do this well, and they have just from behind the scenes. So anyways, okay, now keep talking.
That's just really awkward, Tim. But that was 2 questions. The third question is, when will we be replacing Jamie? So we've actually had people ask us when we a search team different things. This is actually a really difficult question to answer from the standpoint of you're all a part of Journey's culture, and part of what happens whenever you bring in anyone to the culture change. They bring part of themselves. They bring, over the last 4 years, I've been learning the culture of Journey. I've been learning what it means to be a part of this community. Tim has, Susie has, you all have. And part of that culture is part of being a part of the culture is learning it. Now granted, it doesn't answer the question from the vantage point of a timing thing, but here's the answer to the question as best as we can answer it is. It'd be really difficult because of the uniqueness of this church, the uniqueness of this environment, to bring in a lead person, male or female, that has a strong bent in ministry and plop them down. You couldn't take a rookie and put them in here. They wouldn't know what to do. And you take a seasoned person with a lot of experience, they're going to bring their experience and they're going to influence the culture. Our heart's desire is to maintain the culture. And so to bring somebody in would be, our preference would be to bring somebody in, join the teaching team, be a part of the culture for a while, learn our culture, and be a part of us before they are given a significant role like being our lead pastor. I think that explains it.
It kind of moves us from being a church that's built around, I wouldn't even say that Journey was built around a person. Maybe in the earlier days,
Yeah.
it was built around a person because that person Jamie laid a really solid foundation, and he created this culture, which we all have come to love. Mm-hmm. But part of why you were brought on in 2016 was because, in all honesty, he was having a meltdown because everything the buck stopped with him for everything. Mm-hmm. And so the last few years has been really a lot of work in coming away from that one person centric thing to a team of people. Mm-hmm. And we really want to continue it that way. We have some leadership gaps for sure. We need to bring in some more solid leadership and a person who can lead leaders and can also teach, but it's not something that we're absolutely desperate for right now because we have a solid team in place. And really the invitation here for all of us is to come together in prayer and really ask God to give us wisdom and direct our steps in that.
Yeah.
So.
And there's no illusion of the idea that we're going to be able to find somebody just like Jamie. We are not under the illusion that we'll be able to replace Jamie. So.
And when something happens with one person in a community, it affects the whole community. And it's not just for that one person, but it's for the whole community. So God is at work in Jamie and will continue to be at work in Jamie. And at the same time, he's at work in this community. So there's a gift in all of this. There's a grace in all of this for us that obviously he's doing a new thing. And for us, we're just asking, God, would you help us pay attention to what it is that you're doing so that we can step into it fully the way you want us to.
And that's us. by the way.
Yes.
Not just
All of
us,
us.
right? Yep. Hey, why don't you pray for us?
Okay. Father, we thank you that we get to do this, God, that but we live in a place where we can do this freely, and we can do it a lot of different ways. And so we thank you, God, that this church, the church is built on you, Jesus, and that this little local expression, God, in all of its unique ways, has an identity and a purpose within your kingdom, God, to make your love story known in the city of Brentwood, Williamson County, Greater Nashville, God, for the whole kingdom, God. Would you just direct our steps? Give us wisdom, give us discernment, God. Would you open our eyes and help us pay attention, God, to not only what you're doing here inside these walls and on this property and in this community, but everywhere around us, every place and every person and every community that every hand in this Journey Church touches, God. Would you help us pay attention and help us to walk forward in those ways? Thank you for what you've done here. Thank you for the healing that you've brought to so many people, God. Thank you for the awakening, God, that's taken place in so many of us. God, the newness of our faith and the new perspectives we have of seeing you. And thank you for a safe place to ask questions, to break down old ways of thinking, God, and renewing our minds, God, to think and to be more like you. Would you continue in that for us, God? So that we can bring others along, so that we can love others well in the way that you would have us go. Thank you for this team. Thank you for these people that are here gathered today. God, would you just lift our eyes up to you today and give us what we need. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Susie. So Happy New Year. Happy new decade. Yeah. We're going to start a new series. We're calling it Being. And this is going to focus on spiritual formation. And the simplest of definitions for this would be spiritual formation is the shaping of our hearts. It is the development of the idea that our hearts can be formed into the likeness of Christ and all the things and the components that go with that. Every day of your life, your heart is being shaped. I would argue every moment of every day, your heart is being shaped. And with that comes the responsibility of how your heart is being shaped. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about how it's shaped and how Jesus goes about it, how we collaborate with Jesus in doing that. This last week, Lori and I went to see the movie It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Anybody go see it? Nobody went and saw it. Oh, two. Star Wars came out. Yeah, you can only go see so many in a week, right? Not when you're off. I mean, it's like, wow, we got time. We can go see a few movies. Well, see, this was the movie Lori picked. I picked a different movie. And so we went to see A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. If you do, Mr. Rogers, when I was growing up, quite honestly, not a fan. I was not a fan of Mr. Rogers. He talked way too slow, and he wore sweaters. So this from a guy sitting up here in a sweater. He seemed too soft-spoken, too, I don't know. Get to the point, Mr. Rogers. I prefer a fast-speaking soul. But as I sat in the movie, I was actually stunned. I was surprised. I was touched. I don't cry at movies. I don't even cry at funerals. I am not in touch with that particular part of my heart. I don't really go there. I don't want to go there. It's part of, I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But at the movie, I was like, wow, this brings up emotions. This is like, and what I began to realize is even in capturing the life of Fred Rogers is to capture how his heart overflowed into the lives of other people, and how he was a gentle soul, a kind soul, a compassionate soul. It's why children adored him, is because he was safe. What came from him came across even on the screen. And Forrest Gump plays him in the movie. And, oh, wait. Tom Hanks plays him in the movie. Thank you for that. And it doesn't take long for you to get over the fact that Forrest Gump is Mr. Rogers. So, but all that to say, there is this thing going on that transcends even film. There is an idea, a concept, a principle of life that says your heart is presented as you live your life. You naturally and I naturally overflow into the lives of the people around us. And whether we're aware of it or not is a different question. You are, as a human being, naturally overflowing into the lives of the people around you. And it is called the overflow of your heart. You live out of your heart. So spiritual formation happens as our heart is shaped. And so your heart, my heart, all of our hearts are being shaped. For me, the thing that is most fundamentally, I believe, shaped my heart was being the youngest of 4 kids. I grew up in a home, I was the youngest of, I had 2 older brothers and an older sister. And I learned really, really young that the best way to go through life is to not be seen. This from somebody sitting on a stage. Is to not be seen. Because once you are seen, you usually, you've done something that exposes you. And so to be seen, for me, was the worst thing ever. So embarrassment or chastisement or whatever it was attached to that. So I found myself hiding, not only physically hiding, but hiding in terms of just not being present. It's the way my heart was shaped. It was the way that I did self-protection. It was the way that I went through the early part of my life. And some of you can relate to that. Some of you don't get it. I get that. But something shaped your heart when you were young. Our homes of origin shaped our hearts. That's what I'm trying to tell you. And so for me to identify that was huge. As I got older, in high school, there was a turning point for me. That turning point was when my older brother, who went away to college, came home, and I was still in high school, and he looked at me one day and he said, "I see you." And I was like, no one sees me. I hide. But he unraveled my heart for me. He began to say, I used to be just like you. It's better not to be seen. It's better to hide. It's better to not allow people in. It's better not to let God see who you really are. And he began to speak into my life. He began to make my heart move. See, but it's in those moments, right? It's in those moments when somebody speaks to our hearts that we have a choice to make. See, I could have said to him, no, not interested. I'm going to continue down the path of hiding. Or I could say, I'm going to move a position. I'm going to change. I'm going to embrace this idea that my heart needs to change. And he brought me to a place, my brother, and said, look, if you're going to walk with Jesus, you got to walk with Jesus. Let him mold your heart. Let him speak into your heart. You've decided your path. Now let him decide your path. There was a lot that went into that. And when we collectively as a church talk about being refined in community, this is the idea. The idea is that somebody comes alongside and says, I see you. I see your heart. I see what's going on. Allow me to speak into it. Allow God to speak into it. Because oftentimes, I assumed that was the preferred method to go through life. I assumed my decision as hiding was the best way to go through life. It's not. And so to have somebody recognize that, see me, and then invite me into a deeper relationship with Jesus transformed my life. It changed me. And then what began to overflow out of my heart was different than what it was prior to that. We all have those things. I still have those things. Thank God he doesn't expose our heart completely to us all at once. It would overwhelm us. But little by little, he puts people in our lives. He teaches us truths. There's little things that come along. That's what this series is about. It is about those things in our hearts that are overflowing into people's lives that need to change. That's actually spiritual formation. It is the movement of the heart toward Jesus. We actually want to present Jesus' heart. And when I watched that movie, when I watched Mr. Rogers, and as he engaged in somebody who was really broken, he engaged in conversation, I was like, wow, he loves this guy. He didn't even know this guy, but he loves this guy. And how they captured it on film was impressive. And from what I understand, I then was prompted to read more about Fred Rogers, go figure. But it is an accurate depiction of his life, because that's the way he lived. So I invite you into this idea that you and I are overflowing into each other's lives. The only question is, do we see how we're affecting each other? And so this starts with this idea of, I want to take you to a couple passages, and it's rooted in this idea of understanding the heart. And so Proverbs 4:23 says this, above all else. Now, when you read a phrase like that, your ears should go, whoa, wait, above all else. The wisest person in the world that ever lived wrote this, above all else. Okay, take note, above all else. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That's a short verse, but it is the essence of life. It is the essence of our existence. It is the essence of what it is to know how to be human. Because if we go through life thinking that we can make it up as we go along, and that really our behavior is really our just cognitive decisions or our habits or whatever they are, dismisses the very idea that makes us human. Our hearts are what make us human. And our hearts overflow what's in them. And so what he's saying is, guard your hearts is a position, a defensive posture, because what's coming at your heart is ongoing and consistent and happening day in and day out and moment by moment. And if you're not guarding your heart, then your heart is passively being affected by the things around you and the things that you encounter and the people that you know, the job that you do, the boss that you have, the fill in the blank, the family that you're in. And so if you don't take a posture of, I've got to filter what goes in and shapes my heart, everything shapes your heart. Everything. And the human heart wasn't intended to be shaped by everything. It was intended to be shaped by God. So as you go through life, make it a priority to watch over your heart. That's what the Proverbs writer is telling us. So because what you experience in life will be a direct reflection of that heart. And here's the thing. There's evidence of our hearts, because we as human beings want to protect our heart. We often find ourselves, when we're in pain, when our heart hurts, we find a way to make it feel better. We find a way to take away the pain. Whether it's physical or emotional, doesn't really matter. What we do is we create a means by which to make the pain less. And so for some of us, it's, well, I feel bad, I'm going to turn on the TV and I'm going to watch Netflix for the next 12 hours. And it medicates the pain. The pain subsides. But what we're doing is actually shaping our heart. We're shaping our heart away from God, and we're saying, I can solve the problem of my own pain through medicating it, through watching Netflix, or eating ice cream, or social media. I mean, that list, my friends, is as long and varied as this room. Because we all find ways to make our hearts feel better. What happens is it works. So if it didn't work, it wouldn't be a problem, but it works because now I forgot about my pain for 12 hours, or I forgot about it for 15 minutes, or I forgot about this. And what our heart learns, we train our heart that the solution to the pain is distraction. The solution to the pain is watching Netflix or whatever it might be. And excuse me, I didn't mean to spit on you. And we learn, and so then the heart gets shaped. And as the heart gets shaped, we start now living out of the overflow of our heart, which is to solve pain in our own way rather than in God's way. And so when really the answer to my pain is Jesus and collaborating with Jesus and to figure it out through truth and through understanding a relationship with God, we medicate it through a variety of ways. Okay, that's enough about that. But so spiritual formation is it undoes that. We call it deconstruction. We've been calling it deconstruction for a while. We deconstruct the straw men that we create so that we can then move in a direction that moves towards God in such a way that it reshapes the heart. That's what this series is going to be about, is reshaping it, deconstructing ways that we've learned to be independent from God and move in directions where we can be dependent on God. But there's a lot that we do, including me, that is self-protective. And it is rooted in this idea that we as divine creatures, creatures that were made by the divine, made in the image of God, made not God, but made in the image of God, are created specifically to worship him. Jesus put it this way in Luke 12:34, and we worship from our hearts. He says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." We fixate on our treasures, and our heart follows. So if you want to find your heart, find your treasure. And when you find your treasure, you'll find your heart. These two things are connected because we give our hearts to our treasures. We are creatures that worship. And we worship either the divine, God, or we worship the creation. And we often get these things confused. So if you want to find your heart, find your treasure. Here's a quote from N.T. Wright. He says, "When human beings give their heartfelt allegiance to and worship that which is not God, they progressively cease to reflect the image of God. One of the primary laws of human life is that you become like what you worship. What's more, you reflect what you worship not only to the object itself, but also outward to the world around." So if you get that last phrase, he says you reflect what you worship not only to the object itself, but also outward to the world around. What he's talking about is the overflow of the heart. You begin to overflow that which you fixate on. The heart fixates on something and it overflows to the world around you. And so with that, your heart reveals the object of your worship. He continues. He says, "Those who worship money increasingly define themselves in terms of it, and increasingly treat other people as creditors or debtors or partners or customers rather than as human beings. Those who worship sex define themselves in terms of it, their preferences, their practices, their past histories, and increasingly treat other people as actual or potential sex objects. Those who worship power define themselves in terms of it and treat other people as either collaborators, competitors, or pawns. These and many other forms of idolatry combine in 1,000 ways, all of them damaging to the image-bearing quality of the people concerned and those whose lives they touch." The center of worship is our heart, and we live out of the overflow of our heart. And so if the object of our worship is something other than Jesus, it's something other than God, what overflows from our heart is that. And that's what his point is here. His point is what you worship will exude from you. It comes from you. You reflect it to the people around you. And so with that, there has to be this, I need to be made aware. I need to have God revealed to me. And oftentimes it comes in the voice of a person. It comes in the voice of someone who's around you. It comes from the people who are closest to you. You can fake it with people who aren't close to you, but to really be in relationship with someone, your heart is revealed. And what comes out is what you worship. Here's a quote from Reggie McNeil, and he says, I love this opening phrase. He says, God shapes our lives, he does not script them. Just that phrase alone for me is one I dwell on, is that he doesn't have a pre-described script for me, but he does shape my life. And he goes on to say, certainly he makes some unilateral decisions, like what culture of origin we are born into, what time of history we intersect, and maybe some direct interventions along the way. But his work on our hearts requires our collaboration. I love that phrase. God doesn't script our lives, he shapes our lives, but in order to shape our lives, he needs our collaboration in order for our hearts to be molded into the likeness of Christ. Spiritual formation. Spiritual formation is this process that we go through of the shaping of the heart. Our hearts are the way they are because we've been passive in protecting them from the things that influence them, and we haven't always been aligned with Christ. Some of us didn't know Christ until later in life. Some of us did know him early in life, but at the same time, what we end up with is this hodgepodge of, oh, this is how my heart got formed. This worked for me, so I'm going to continue to do it. This didn't work for me, so I jettison that. And so there's a whole thing going on, and your heart is being shaped day by day, moment by moment, minute by minute. Are you paying attention is the question. Am I paying attention? Here's the question of the day, or maybe the year, or maybe of our lives. What is shaping your heart? Are you aware of it? Are you aware of what is shaping your heart? What teachings are you listening to? What truths are shaping your heart? What lies do you believe? See, we want our hearts to overflow peace, and we want them to overflow patience, and we want them to overflow love, but all that requires a heart that's fixed on Jesus, a heart that is worshiping Jesus, a heart that is trained by Jesus, a heart that is molded and shaped by Jesus. And it requires us to shift positions, to change. Right now in my life, the ongoing process of heart change is going on for me, and for me right now, it is rooted in my relationship with emotions. I think God's been working on me in this arena for about a year, and I'm not normally very in touch with my emotions by design. I learned how to not to. And so part of my overflow of my heart is not to allow other people their emotions. So I will have a conversation with my wife, Lori, and I will hurt her feelings. My initial response is to say, Lord, forgive me. You're really not allowed those emotions. I don't say it like that. I say it like this. My intent was not to hurt you, so you shouldn't feel that way. By the way, that is a bad statement. Because it doesn't matter what my intent is when I invalidate somebody else's emotions. What I'm doing is protecting my heart from feeling the weight and the pain that I've caused somebody else. Because I'm justifying the overflow of my heart into somebody else's life by saying, I didn't mean to do that. Whether I meant to do it or not, they are feeling what they're feeling because my overflow has made them feel that way. Own it. That's what God's telling me. Own it. And say, you know what? I apologize. I am really sorry. And if I just could stop saying, I didn't intend to. Because at that moment, her feelings aren't attached to whether I intended it or not. Her feelings are her feelings. So what God's working on in me, I don't know what he's working on in you. I know what he's working on in me. It's me being able to acknowledge and accept that emotions are a real thing, and they happen in other people in different ways than they happen in me. But a lot of times I cause those emotions, and I need to own that. Because my overflow of my heart invokes something in someone else. See, we're not independent, isolated beings. We affect each other. There's no going through life. See, if you put me in my younger body and you go, how can you live a hidden life? I'm not seen, don't look at me, I can isolate, and I'm not going to emote, I'm not going to say anything. That's hiding. That's not living. And so I still have moments where I would rather hide than be seen. This is one of them. But I want to invite you into a deeper, more meaningful relationship with Jesus. So as you look at your heart, and just take a moment, let's just take a moment. I'm going to ask the band to come up, look at the floor, do it, close your eyes, and ask the question, what is it that's in your heart that God's working on? I think he's telling us. He's telling us through other people. He's telling us through inner conviction. He's telling us through truth. He's telling us through just the way we live our lives. But I want to invite you into more than just hearing me confess my struggle, but what's your struggle? And allow Jesus to shape that and mold that. See, I have to turn mine over regularly to Jesus and say, I need to move a position. I need to be aware that I don't allow people their emotions. And if I'm going to be honest with you, it's because I think life is easier without emotions. That's just honest. Not better, not richer, not fuller, just easier. And easier was never the path to a full, rich life. It's just the quick out. So I just want to invite you. I want to invite you just to take a minute and talk to Jesus as the music plays and ask him, where does my heart need to change?